So I grew up on Long Island in a very suburban environment, really wondering why my neighborhood was surrounded by highways and why I couldn't get very far on my bike, and why when I visited my family in New York City, things felt very different there. So I grew up very interested in what made some places very fun to walk around and felt like you had a lot of freedom, and what made other places seem very limiting, and the different types of choices that were made to make those places the way they are. So I started by going to school for urban planning. Originally, I studied architecture and then moved into the study of urban planning. And then I moved back to my hometown and took a job in government in our local planning department. And then from there, I worked for different municipalities, and then have served on some of the local boards, like planning boards and zoning boards, in my community. And I've continued to work in different levels, such as for some of the local towns, for the county, and now for one of the villages. I'd say one of the core values is making places work for everybody.
Hmm.
And that means whether people are pedestrians, bicyclists, whether they drive, whether they use public transportation. For example, one of the projects that I had worked on the county involved redesigning a road to create a roundabout. And one of the things that we worked really hard on that was making sure that the roundabout worked well for bicyclists, which can sometimes be confusing. So we incorporated some specific design features to make it easy for bicyclists to kind of get up onto the sidewalk where they might feel safer, or to enter and exit the road a little bit more safely, so that we were thinking about all of the users, not just cars and drivers. Which was named one of the great places of America based on a recommendation that I had wrote through the American Planning Association. And one of the things that I think that makes it a great place is that there's options for everybody. There's a great mix of housing options. There's apartments and there's single family houses, and there's also a lot of things in the middle, like townhouses and condos and different types of housing. And I think it makes it a great place because there's been a lot of effort on revitalizing the downtown, making it very walkable and a very desirable place to be, with a lot of nice mix of different uses like stores and restaurants and bars and theater, with a lot of emphasis on community and the arts, and also a lot of open space and natural resources that put a lot of efforts into beautifying our parks and our waterfront, and creating new park spaces. So I think those are the things that make this a great place. So one of the projects I'm working on in my job is a workforce housing zoning code amendment. So what this would hope to do is change the zoning laws of the village that I work for to allow for more housing to be built, and for that housing to be more affordable. So the idea is that if you allow people to build more different types of housing, like duplexes or small apartments or apartments above stores, that more housing can be built for people in the workforce, like teachers and firefighters and things like that, at an affordable rate. So we're kind of excited about that, and we're working on developing that from the initial study phase. We did a plan. We have some recommendations, and now we're working on implementing those regulations, those recommendations into law. Well, I think partnerships with other groups are important. In my role, I work with a lot of different boards, such as we have an architectural board, a zoning board, a planning board. We also work with consultants who, in the planning field, who bring their specialized knowledge to it. So it's important that all of those groups work together and that are on the same page, and that are implementing the community's vision that's identified in our comp plan. One name that comes to mind is Jane Jacobs.
Hmm.
She was the author, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, which
Oh, I
was
know that. Yeah.
a very influential book. I think she really looked at
Hmm.
cities in a very critical way, and urban planning, and talked about what makes neighborhoods work, and the mix of uses that you need in a neighborhood to make things work, of people coming and going at different times, at different income levels, at different types of housing, different types of businesses that operate on different hours, and how that brings vitality to places and makes them safe and dynamic and interesting places to be. So I'd say a great place to start is getting involved in your local town or village, whatever it may be,
Hmm.
and just really getting familiar with the different projects. Every town or village has boards that approve projects, and a lot of times they do that without a lot of input or interest from the public, because it's a little bit hard to find out information. People have busy lives; they don't pay as much attention to these things. But I think to start by paying attention to what's getting the projects that are in your community, and what the local boards are doing and how they're making those decisions,
Hmm.
I think is a really good entry point. I think the more people that get involved and speak up and make their voices heard, the more democratic the process becomes.